Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and we'll now resume the special council meeting, which we recessed earlier. For those in the audience, as well as those watching online, the reason you see we thought we would do a festive attire afternoon for those who chose to participate. So you see various versions of that around the council and staff horseshoes. For the holiday season. We have two items on this afternoon's special council meeting. The 2021 Canada Summer Games bid, as well as the Planning and Development Advisory Committee issue that was deferred to this meeting today. As we do have a number of delegations for Canada Summer Games bid here, we'll start off with that item. And Kim, is it you or Bob that are going to start off? Kim? Thank you. And welcome to everyone who's here for this.
Thank you, Mayor Verbanuk, and thank you for adjusting the schedule today, so we really appreciate that. Before you today, there is a large contingency of the volunteer bid committee present with us. We have Jeff Berg, we have Sherry Toren, we have Scott Farley, Jim Hallman, Tim Jackson, Ted Kratz, Tom Kendall, Paul Lalonde, Janice Moore, as well as we have Virginia Wesley. And Mandy Bugeaud is also going to be part of the local bid committee, which we're honored to have her participate as well. We're here today with a number of recommendations that are necessary to ensure that we have the approvals from Council to complete Phase 2 of the bid process for 2021 Canada Summer Games. The submission is due by January 31st of 2017. The local volunteer bid committee, in collaboration with city staff from Kitchener, Cambridge, and Waterloo, and you'll see some of our counterparts from the other cities here, require that a commitment of all three municipalities before any agreements can be created with venue owners, service providers, and sponsors must be committed first. So before we can include anything in the financial and the final bid submission, we really need to have the support of all three municipalities. This bid submission is conditional on having that commitment. Without the three cities, there is no bid. A version of this report is going forward to Waterloo Council tonight and Cambridge Council tomorrow evening, Tuesday, December the 13th. The bid committee has contributed countless hours and energy in this bid, the joint Waterloo Region bid. Without their support, we would not be able to complete the work to date or even be considered contenders for the hosting of the 2021 Canada Summer Games. The commitment to host the Games is substantial. There is a financial component to underwrite any operating losses if the game loses money, which also is in combination with a commitment for $1 million per city into capital. Both the provincial and federal governments will contribute $7,350,000 each to the Games operating budget. To date, there has been no Summer or Winter Canada Games that has lost money, and we don't see any reason why the Games should be any different in this community. The $3 million combined capital contribution from the three cities will be matched by $3 million from the province and $3 million from the federal government. If the joint bid is successful, then Kitchener's capital contribution will be found within existing capital during the 2018 budget cycle in an effort to leverage the additional new capital dollars within the community. The bid committee has been selected in their process of collaborating with venues and services that already exist within the appropriate travel distance for the Games. Utilizing existing infrastructure allows us to leverage the capital dollars from the federal and provincial governments towards improving and enhancing existing facilities, as well as ensuring that the facilities can financially continue to operate post-Games. There are a number of negotiations that need to occur to confirm venues and services before we can respond to every question related to venues, budgets, and the legacy of hosting the 2021 Games. Some of the responses today may sound general, but will be confirmed once we can complete the negotiations in advance of the January 31st, 2017 submission. These negotiations can only occur if all three cities have committed to bidding for the Games. This community has a rich sport history, which is evident in the accomplishments of our local athletes, our coaches, and in our success with hosting numerous national and international sporting events. Just think back to 2009 and recall how many people rallied around the Olympic torch during the Christmas holidays in Kitchener to capture a bit of the spirit and excitement that comes with sport. Before we take any questions, the Volunteer Bid Committee is here to provide some additional information about the bid, the process, the economic impacts, and the importance of being selected to host the 2021 Canada Summer Games. Today, the presentation will be made by Mandy Bugeaud, Janice Moore, and Sherry Dwar in regards to, again, who's on the local, related to the legacy, the economic impacts, and the importance of hosting the games. So I'll turn it now to the presentation.
Wonderful. Welcome, ladies, and welcome, Mandy. This is the first time, I think, since the Olympics that we can publicly congratulate you on all of your efforts, particularly the challenges that you went through during the Olympics. So on behalf of Council, congrats.
Thank you. So Mayor Brbanovic, council members, and invited guests, the bid committee assembled here today would like to thank you for the opportunity to stand before you and present further information on our bid for the 2021 Canada Summer Games and request for approval of the resolution. While I personally didn't get the chance to compete at the Canada Games, I know how important these games are for young athletes. The experience these athletes gain at events like this are irreplaceable. For some athletes, this is the pinnacle of their career, and for other athletes like Lennox Lewis and Andre DeGrasse, it is the launching pad for an incredible athletic career. The Canada Games provides lifelong memories and competition experience that will not only create better athletes, but will also create better citizens in the future. Sport is something that can bring a community together, and we have the opportunity to showcase Waterloo Region through the 2021 Canada Games. I'm very proud to be part of this committee, and at this time I would like to ask my fellow committee colleagues to the opportunity to provide more information in respect to our bid.
Thank you. Thank you, Mandy. So roughly a year ago, this week, ironically, the Regional Sport Tourism Office, along with representatives from the 3 municipalities, traveled to Toronto for a Canada Games information session. We were joined by 27 other cities that showed and expressed an interest in bidding for the Games at the time. Since that time, we've been busy working. We came in front of you last spring to ask for your support to endorse a letter of support to bid, and we received unanimous acceptance across the cities. We did our due diligence by working on a very detailed Phase 1 technical package that was submitted in June, and we experienced a technical evaluation visit at the end of August from a committee from the Canada Games Council that reviewed what we had put forward to them to test out the viability of a bid from this area. In September, we were very proud to accept the news that we were one of 4 communities that were recognized to move forward to the final bidding phase. And since that time, we've been on the ground running, trying to prepare some of the background information, the due diligence that was asked for us the first time we came in front of you, so that we could make a bit of a better case for hosting the games. So at the point now in the timeline, we're in front of you. After this moment, if we receive your acceptance, we will work on completing the final bid submission that's due at the end of January. We will experience a bid evaluation committee site visit here within the cities on February the 28th, and that's our opportunity to shine and show our community engagement, the reason why we want to have the games. And the final decision will be made on March 30th or 31st of the upcoming year as to who is the winning committee to host the games. So as you've heard, the team behind the bid. So we started off with the Regional Sport Tourism Office and our municipal representatives, and we've expanded to a bid committee. These people are local champions within our communities. The business acumen they carry, the sport hosting experience they carry is second to none, and there's no doubt that we'd be capable of hosting a games of this magnitude here. In terms of community engagement, at this moment in time, we've had roughly 200 meetings with engaged partners, and whether that go across institutions, post-secondary, secondary institutions, we've looked at transit services, potential sponsors, waste management, venue logistics, sport technical issues. We've really been engaged with those that we would need to have as part of our team to execute a games of this magnitude. We've presented to the minor sport groups within the 3 cities as well too, and we've received a great level of acceptance, and we've been receiving quite a few letters of support in from not only our minor sport groups, but champion athletes that are representing Canada on an international level that come from this region, as well as local businesses. The Canada Games are a photo finish, national anthem, top of the podium, world-class kind of opportunity for our Canadian youth. They're held every 2 years, alternating between a winter and a summer games, but they are a once-in-a-lifetime generational bid. So it's important to understand that this will not come around again for another 20 to 25 years. So this is our time to shine and put a bid forward. This is also the biggest national opportunity that fits this market to host a games of this size. When we look at the numbers, there's 19 different sports that are included, and the athlete participation also involves para and Special Olympic inclusion. There's approximately 13,000 people that become active at games time with executing and delivering the games or participating in the games. And that includes 4,500 competitors with a mix of 3,500 athletes and 1,000 coaches and managers with them. There's representation from all 13 provinces and territories of Canada. This really is a national brand that the country is very proud of, and it's celebrating its 50th anniversary this upcoming summer in Winnipeg. Right now, we've recognized a total of 45 sport and non-sport venues. 30 of those venues are referenced for sport. There's an estimate that 20,000 spectators would come into this area if a games were hosted in 2021 here in August, and it roughly is held over 18 days. So why should we host the games? We've had a great presentation made by city staff and some of the colleagues on the bid committee, so I'm just going to try to touch on a few of these points. In terms of our investment, we know when we invest in our youth that this is a stepping stone in an athlete's career, and whether it's their career moving on to become a high-performance athlete on the international stage, or whether it's to become a CEO in a boardroom, or to become that teacher in front of a classroom of kids and inspire them every day. The other investment we make when we invest in our youth is it's the promotion of sport and physical activity, and that's at the core of the Canada Games movement. It involves school-based programming that would be widespread within this region, and it would help tackle not only the physical literacy challenges that we see today, but childhood obesity. When we talk about investment in our legacy, by working together in partnership on this bid, the 3 cities have demonstrated the collective ability to efficiently leverage the opportunity and shared benefit through working via our regional sport tourism model through the RSTO. We've also recognized and are looking to invest in the sport facility infrastructure our cities currently have within our inventory and enhance their capabilities to meet our national standards for hosting, not only now, but into the future, into 2021. When we look at an investment in our people and our social legacy, we're looking at leveraging 6,000 volunteers that are required to pull off a games of this magnitude, but also within the 4.5 years that it takes to build up towards the games. So it's not just the 18-day period of the games as well. When we talk about investment in our community, we all know here that we're one of Canada's fastest growing areas. We're a dynamic urban center, but we also maintain that small town feel within the 3. We also plan on working closely with our world-renowned leaders in our technology sector to take these games to new heights and to really showcase what we can do to make this community look special across Canada. When we look at the investment in our future, our technology sector, our smart transit system, our innovative people, and our learning institutions are at the forefront of these trends, and they will help define Canada's future and define our bid for these Canada Games. I'll just turn it over to Janice, my colleague here.
Kim has already touched on the financial impacts, but I don't think they can be stressed enough. They're the most important part. In the capital investment, $6 million, if the bid is won, will be brought into this region, into all 3 cities. And the bid committee's worked on it so that it is an investment in the current infrastructure that you already have. The Games brings operating money from both levels of the government. 7.3 million from both the Government of Canada and Government of Ontario to mitigate the operating expenses. As far as I can see, this is the most important piece and the most important slide. Over the 50-year history of the Games, they have never lost any money. I understand that you're being asked to underwrite this bid, but I think that you need to keep that most upper mind in your mind and look at the fact that there is a surplus every single year back since London 2001. And the economic impact. This is the economic impact over the last 7 games. And if you take a look all the way back to Halifax, it's been in excess of $1 million. It is spread out over not just this region, but it will spill over into all the other cities and townships around as people come into the region.
I think you meant 100 million? In excess of 100 million.
Sorry, I said, I knew I was going to make a mistake.
It's okay. No, you're doing great. You're doing great. Don't worry. I just wanted to correct it for the viewing audience.
I was looking for the mistake, and there it was. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Janice. If it makes her feel any better, I kept doing that all last week as well, too. So in summary, and again, we're concluding what you've already heard through the collective, but we do have a proven track record of hosting events of this nature, and not only hosting them, but supporting events where they continue to keep coming back into this area. We also have the ability to leverage our corporate partners, our institutions, and our people that are capable of delivering these games when we work together. And last but not least, I cannot enforce this enough. Speaking on behalf of sport tourism, this is the national property that fits this market perfectly that we have an opportunity to bid on, and we can't take that lightly, especially if we're one of 4 left standing for this bid. So in conclusion, as you can see, a great deal of work has been put forth from a year ago to this date to get here. Unfortunately, though, we can't continue with some of this work unless we have the acceptance of a new team member to come on board, and the team members are the 3 cities that we're asking to support us in this resolution. So I ask you to engage with us further, to accept the resolution that we have put forth to you so that we continue to look at moving forward with this bid, and we can look at hosting a bid evaluation committee on February 28th here in this region. Thank you.
Wonderful. Well, let me begin before I give the floor to members of council for questions to thank the 3 of you for presenting today, but literally to everyone in the room and those not in the room for the many, many, many countless hours that have been put in to putting this proposal together to get it to this point on behalf of the 3 cities in the region. I think it's a very exciting opportunity, and it wouldn't have gotten to this point without all of your efforts and collaboration. So thank you in that regard. Now, as you can expect, there's lots of questions, and so we'll start off with Councillor Ioannidis. Oh, yes. Can you click in, Kim? Go ahead.
I believe there was 2 registered delegations as well. David Peacock is here.
Sorry.
And Nancy is here from the Waterloo Regional Tourism.
Sorry, I don't even have those names. So, sorry, who's the other delegation? Yes, you all can come forward. My apologies. Councillor Ioannidis, I'll come back to you if you can click in again.
Your
Welcome.
Worship, councillors. I'm David Peacock from the Regional Tourism Office from the Ministry of Tourism, Culture and Sport. My peer is Nancy Kaiser, who is the GM at the Radisson, but is also on the Board of Directors of WRTMC. And if we may, we'd just like to take some time and explain why we are firmly behind this bid. The Regional Tourism Office has been running for about 5 years, and I know a number of you one-on-one, and I will say this is the only region in Ontario where the regional office didn't decide it would rebrand Kitchener-Waterloo or Algonquin Park or Niagara Falls into something else. It said the brands we have here in this region are strong, they're 150 years old, and the assets we have need to be leveraged and grown. There's no reason to do tourism as an economic impact or an economic development tool unless it improves the lives of the citizens of the city in which you're in. And sport tourism is exactly that opportunity. 4 years ago, we commissioned a study on meetings and conventions and received some news back at the end of that consultation that we lived in an area where there was a glut of meetings and convention opportunity north, south, east, and west of us that was municipally funded, that was taxpayer underwritten, and generally sat empty. The good news in that study came out, however, that with the combined mass of Kitchener, Waterloo, and Cambridge, there were more sport facilities, more sport teams, more coaches, more volunteers, and more raw opportunity than maybe anywhere else in Ontario. The Canada Games represents the opportunity to take that raw material and mold it together, and if we can achieve what we're looking for at the RSTO, put Kitchener, Waterloo, Cambridge on the map as the third most impressive sport tourism opportunity in the province, behind only Toronto and Ottawa, and I don't need to tell you how big their budgets are. So we look at this as a great investment at the regional tourism office. We've put $150,000 a year into sport tourism for the last 3 years. That's $450,000. We do it with a contribution in partnership with WRTMC that puts another $20,000 a year on top of that. And we indeed echo that this is the biggest national opportunity that fits in this market. And I think that's a really important statement, fits in this market. A very careful calculation of the resources and the opportunities here to bring something of this size in a way that works. We have a very viable chance to win this bid, and if we win it and leverage that provincial and federal investment, then we can further grow the facilities and the assets that we have here to better serve not just the people coming in, but the people who live here. And that said, I'd like to turn it over to Nancy Kaiser, my partner from WRTMC.
I would just like to recap that the 2021 Canada Games will bring $100 million in economic impact to the host community. Sports has been identified as a priority in the Waterloo Regional Tourism Strategic Plan. 20,000 spectators and 13,000 athletes, coaches, staff, and volunteers will be in our region for 18 days in August 2021 if we're successful in this bid win. That means 33,000 people will eat, drink, sleep, shop here for 18 days. And we will have more national and provincial media coverage than we could ever buy, focusing on Waterloo Region. We will firmly establish Waterloo Region as a destination for sports events. And you've heard it both from Sherry and David, and I'll repeat it. Canada Games is the biggest national opportunity that fits this market to showcase our cities. Please support moving forward with our bid for success. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much to both of you, David and Nancy. And perhaps what we'll do today is, as we go around the horseshoe with questions, if people can indicate if they, maybe the two of you can stay downstairs in the seats in case anybody has questions of you. And if folks can, if you have questions, indicate if your questions are for the first group or the second group that are all part of the presentation. And then, as normal, we'll go to questions of staff afterwards. So, Councillor Ioannidis, you were first.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Vanderbeek. I'll echo the same comments from the Mayor. Just great, fabulous work by everyone involved. I have a few questions, and one of the questions is, and I'm not sure who this could be directed to. Am I out to lunch, or wasn't Guelph part of this this group as well at one point, or?
I don't know who wants to take that.
Yes. Through you, Mayor. When we initially started to embark in this adventure a year ago, we did have partners. So the RSTO does have 4 city partners as part of our collaboration. And as we were doing our due diligence, cities started identifying what they thought was viable and what they didn't in terms of commitment. And where we were was Guelph did a bit of an assessment. They also are dealing with some challenges internally with the staff structure as well too. So at this time they chose to still remain interested, but at a different partnership level. Okay.
My other question is in regards to obviously the amount of funding that's never lost any any funds for a community that's hosted, what would we do with the surplus of the funds?
Through you, Mayor. What we would do typically at the conclusion of a games, where you see that in that chart, that surplus line, that money is actually invested in a legacy fund. And there are terms of reference that are created for that fund early on in the winning of the games. And at the conclusion of hosting the games and the dissolution of the organizing committee, the legacy funds then are turned over, and they're either created into their own foundation work, or they're leveraged off with other nonprofits that may be in the community. And that money can be identified to go towards anything from working with youth who may be from low income, or minorities that don't get access to regular sport and recreation programming. It could be for potential nationally identified athletes who are trying to either get invited to a national camp but don't have the funding to go. It could be in terms of maintaining investment in our sport infrastructure. It also could be creating a bid reserve fund in terms of bidding on future sport hosting opportunities as well, too.
Okay, so that's really good. And my next question is sort of related, but because I'm hoping, because when I looked at the list of the last hosting communities, their catchment area didn't seem as broad in range as ours. Is that a fair assessment?
Through you, Mayor, that is correct. Okay. So as I had mentioned, the games are on a bit of a 20-year cycle. There's equality in terms of how they're hosted across the provinces and territories. We know that Ontario is one of the biggest markets, but it only comes through every 20 some odd years. So we do know that looking at it coming back into an Ontario market after having been away in somewhere like northern BC or out on the east coast of Canada, it's a wonderful opportunity to leverage the fact that they're coming into a prime market.
Okay, that's great. Mr. Mayor, when the time's appropriate, I'd like to move the recommendation.
Okay, I'll come back to you. Councillor Singh.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I think everyone will say the same thing, but it can't be said enough. And thanks to all your collective hard works in kind of carrying this momentum forward and keeping our community as a viable contender in attracting these games. So the numbers that we're looking at, it's astounding as to the regional economic development potential on this. And at the same time, relative to what the risk is. So in my mind, risk is always based on past assessment and experience. And with what you're saying over the last 25 years, of all the communities that have partaken, no one's incurred a loss. So I don't know if you're comfortable saying this or not, but I'm guessing it's pretty small risk as to what our commitment would be.
Through you, Mayor, I'm thinking I should just stay up here. Just to answer that, you're correct in terms that it's never incurred a loss. What I can answer to you is that there are quite a few system checks involved when you win the opportunity to host the games. So every time that you move forward in terms of budget creation, it does need to be approved by a board of directors and with the Canada Games Council as well. And you also, as part of Canada Games Council, you have all of your members of the provincial and territorial governments as well too. So the Canada Games Council takes great pride in the fact that it has never lost or incurred a deficit because of the balance check that exists and the fact that that property is so valuable across the country as well too.
Okay. Now, Councillor Ioannidis touched on a part of the question I was going to ask that related to potential surpluses, and you've answered that it needs to go into a legacy fund. And also he kind of referred to us as a region. I think we have a decent enough population base, as well as being close proximity to a larger metropolitan area like Toronto. We can only hope, but I think the success of this could be astounding as to the return and what the surpluses could be. Now, does all of it need to go into the legacy fund, or depending on obviously the success of it, there's opportunity to do other things as well, depending on what the surpluses are?
Yes, through you, Mayor. I think something really important, and it could be based on the creativity of the committee as we move forward when you win the games. And it's not only limited to sport. per se. It could go into the creation of an arts and festival fund. It could go into community engagement. It's vastly unlimited where that money can be focused to, as long as it goes back into the community that served as the host of those games.
Now, focus of this is the Canada Games, but I'm guessing when you're preparing as a community for games of this size on a national level, and of course the improvements to our recreational infrastructure, I'm guessing leading up and afterwards there's a lot of opportunities that originated out of this. I don't know who would be the appropriate person to answer that, but have you experienced in the past that looking at other communities of what other games or venues they were able to attract leading up and after?
Yes, through you, Mayor, it's a wonderful question, and that is true. So in the 4.5 years that you have since the time of awarding of the games, you do need to run some test events in the sport venues. One is you're testing the capacity of your volunteer crew to make sure that they feel comfortable delivering something on a national or provincial level. You want to test out your transportation system. You want to test out your messaging as well, too, to make sure that the community is aware that these events are coming into the market. You also want to help capture the spirit of the games as well, too. And so not only would you have test events, you would have some conferences that come in specific to the Canada Games, but you would also look to leverage certain areas. So it could be social innovation. It could be technology, as we've mentioned as well, too. So things that are thematic around games, but that you start to build a groundswell of interest in communicating that as well, too. The other piece as well that I just might add is you also have key milestones as you move forward with the games as well, too. So you would want to do a 200-day out celebration with the community, a 100-day out celebration where you bring everybody in to feel that pride. And there's also, as Kim Kugler had mentioned, with the Olympic torch relay, there is a Canada Games relay that takes place as well, too. And there's a huge sense of pride within the province to be able to host something of that nature as well, too. So the hosting is unlimited beyond those 18-day of hosted sport events.
Well, that continuity is exciting of how we can energize our community here. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Yanetsky.
Yes, thank you very much for your presentation, and very captivating, I must admit. A handful of questions, and then I'll go to staff, but we'll do that later. You indicated that as part of phase one, that there was about 21 municipalities, 2021, went to Toronto to get the feedback, background, etc., and now we're down to 4. What happened to those other 17? Did they just not qualify to go to phase 2, or did they just withdraw, or what generally happened, just so we know?
Yes, through you, Mayor. To answer that question, it can be a few different variables. One could have been trying to understand the size and scope of the games and what's actually required. So as I mentioned previously, we had to do a technical assessment that was due in June, and we were actually evaluated in August in person by a committee that came into town. And some of the cities may have realized that they didn't have what it took to deliver, but that the cost investment may have been too high for them to have to enhance what they didn't already have. In other cases, we've got some cities that already have some key sport hosting events that are going on, and right now in Windsor, they're hosting the FINA short course World Swimming Championships. So in some cases, they took a look at budget and commitment, and they decided that they had enough within their sport hosting agenda over the next couple of years that they just couldn't see making this commitment.
Okay, very interesting. We've got the 3 cities participating, Kitchener, Waterloo, and Cambridge. And based on the report here, it's going to be all divvied up a third, a third, a third. Yet I'm sort of puzzled by that. I'm puzzled, but not puzzled, in that, yes, it is a third, 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 but Kitchener is twice the size of Waterloo and Cambridge. I thought maybe we may have to pay half, and they would pay a quarter each, because just by size proportion. But I'm happy with 1/3. Is that how it was arrived at, or what was the rationale?
They're pointing at me to answer this question. I think that what you should take that as an indication of the investment, that all 3 cities are wanting to play an equal role in the partnership. We had some early talks about what would that percentage look like, and at the end of the day, we came back to, if we were going to be committed, everybody benefits in different ways. One of our cities may benefit from sport hosting through their venues, but not have enough space to host accommodations for spectators coming into town. In other cases, one of our other partner cities has a vast inventory of accommodation space, but they may not have the sport venue space. So that's part of the collaboration that the Regional Sport Tourism Office has been working under and looking at the strengths that each of the partners bring to the table and addressing them that way. And the conclusion was that we were stronger to go together in equal partnership.
Okay, appreciate that answer. Very, very good. You mentioned, and I know it's in the report, but there's also mentioned that there'll be so many athletes and so many coaches and managers coming, and you mentioned 20,000 spectators. Is that 20,000 spectators over the whole 18 days? And then when I think about it, that works out to about 1,000 spectators a day, or is you double counting because some people may stay for a week or a handful of days? How did the number come about?
Yes, through you, Mayor. It's simply an estimation, and I would say that it's on the safer side of things, as a previous question had addressed, because we're coming into a very high-density market. The assumption is that we would have more spectators. So the 18 days of the games are actually divided within 2 weeks. So week one, competitors that come in, they compete, and then they go home. And then another group of athletes, coaches, and managers come in for week two. And so the dynamics of week one and week two are completely different. It's different sports being hosted. And so it's, in terms of estimating the number of spectators, family, and friends that could come in, it's difficult at this moment in time, given the timeline that we have, but that's a safe number.
Okay, appreciate that. Final question would be, similar to Pan Am Games, the Olympics, of course, there's medal standings, etc. What do you do with the Canada Games? Like, is it Vancouver versus Kitchener versus Toronto versus Halifax and so many, or how does that work, or just there's none, just individual athletes are recognized?
Through you, Mayor, thank you. In a past life, I actually was a chef for a provincial team that went to the games. I was responsible for 350 athletes. There is an incredible sense of pride when you represent your province or your territory, much the same as if you were representing Canada. So the provinces and territories carry their own country-like atmosphere. They're in their ceremonial dress. They compete under the banner of their provincial crest or territorial crest, and actually their performances equal out to points. So there are medals that are awarded, but each athlete performance also equals out to points as well too. And there is an award that's given at the end of the games to the province that wins the most medals. There's also an award given at the end of the games to the province that accumulates the most points, and we call that flag points. And there also is an award, I'm proud to say that we won it with the province I was with at the last games. There's an award to the most improved province or territory. And so every athlete that steps on that playing field needs to feel like their performance counts. And it may be that they won't be able to vie for a medal, a first, second, or third place finish, but they will go for fourth or fifth, meaning that it's going to propel their province or territory into getting a better result and performance than they had at the last games. And there's an incredible sense of pride behind that.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we have 5 more speakers on this item at this point, or people wanting to ask questions. I just want to remind Council we need to get through this item and one other item by 5 o'clock. So if you can just try to stay focused. Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Mayor Bravanovic. My question is more about the post-Canada Games benefit. So we make improvements to our facilities. We can say that this was a Canada Games venue. Is that helpful, that, you know, with any experience, if a local sport group wants to bid on another tournament, so after the Canada Games, is there some value to saying this was a Canada Games venue? Could that benefit a bid?
Yes, through you, Mayor. Absolutely. Absolutely. It's the credibility of being a venue that meets the national standard, where you can bring in easily those tournaments and not have to worry about maintenance cost or new capital costs that would happen. There's also, the best example I can use for all of you is the City of London. And if you look at the City of London's trajectory over sport hosting over the last 20 years since they hosted the game, or coming up to 16 years since they hosted in 2001, you see that legacy of hosting the Canada Games really put them in a good position to identify all those different sport hosting properties that they had. The capacity of their volunteers on the ground with the knowledge transfer of having hosted games and knowing how to execute in events like that, and also the relationships and the network that's built through partnership as well too. So it's absolutely invaluable.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Fernandez.
Yes, I do have a number of questions, and some of them I have to direct to staff. So you've answered the question related to the venues, the facilities once they're renovated, that they'll be at a higher provincial standard and will be more attractive to other sports. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yes, through you, Mayor. Not only that, but if you're an average family and you're heading to the arena, and you've taken your child and you need to text your partner to say that they're going to come and pick them up, we want to make sure that our venues have Wi-Fi capability, that it meets national broadcast standards, and those are some of the pieces that we're asked to have when we put bids forward to host certain events. So that's what this would leverage us to be able to complete some of that work as well too.
Okay. So when I'm looking at the chart that was on related to the host cities and there's no page number, so I apologize, I can't, but it relates to winter, summer. In 2013, Sherbrooke came out with a surplus of $2,255,000. In 2015, London, is that right? London?
Prince George. BC?
Prince George.
I'm talking about summer. So who did the summer games in?
There was no summer games in 2015.
Okay, so
the last summer games would have been 2013 Sherbrooke, and then previous to that would have been 2009 in Prince Edward Island.
okay, so maybe Kim can help me understand. I heard that when I met with you on Friday that London only had a surplus of $250,000. So maybe you might want to help me. When did that occur? Was that 2001?
Ms. Kugler.
Through you, Mayor Verbanowicz. Yes, London hosted in 2001.
Okay, all right. Because my question was going to be, if they hosted it, why did Sherbrooke make $2 million and then London only $250,000? But if it's 2001, that definitely explains why. I think the other questions are a little bit more geared towards staff, so I'll just ask staff. So this already has taken significant staff time to help prepare the bid, to meet with council, to work with the bid committee. How much time has it taken so far, and how much more time? Because there's no way that this is not going to take staff time. I would like to have an understanding of, and where are we going to have to reorganize so that the positions and the time that you're spent working on this, do we have to hire new people? How is that going to happen?
Ms. Kugler.
Through you, Mayor Verbanowicz. So a part of sport tourism exists in the portfolio of both Bob Shane and myself, and so bringing these events are part of the mandate that we have within our job positions. So core responsibilities do have some time built in. I would say that honestly the host committee, the volunteers that are here today, have taken on the burden of the work. We also engaged some assistance from the financial staff, and the commitment between now and Christmas is probably about 4 to 6 hours a week. And the idea is that once, or if we can proceed with this and complete the paperwork that needs to go in for the January 31st submission, we'll reevaluate when the games were actually awarded, so that we'll look at, on the committee, making up a composition of staff that either will be seconded in part of that budget to deal with the items going forward through the actual preparation for the games, and then into 2021 of hosting the games. So the actual real work, once we're awarded the games in April, would actually then be looked at with the host committee, and they would set up a new, so the bid committee that's working on the volunteer component would then, they would dissolve, and then a host committee would be formed to take us through until 2021, and in that, a lot of the work would be identified in either seconded positions, or it would be part of a combination of volunteer and secondment.
Okay, and I can understand you may not have an understanding yet, but did you speak with other cities to find out the hours, when you're talking about a secondment, which means if you yourself are seconded to this project for the next two years, somebody has to fill your workload. I mean, that still goes on, that still carries on. And I mean, you know, with all due respect, Kim, I understand that this may be a very difficult question to answer, but I think it has to play into what's going to happen to our city staff. My time has gone so fast all of a sudden. I'm going to tag on this question related to senior financial manager would be seconded from our city staff as well. So that would be 2, maybe 3 positions.
Through you, Mayor Vervanek, to be fair, I'm not sure that we would have all of those positions. I think what typically happens when you have an event of this magnitude is that the cities will be partners all the way through. So we'll have a lens to always make sure that we're part of the check and balances. But the seconded positions will be posted positions, whether the incumbents come from people that have already done games in other municipalities or other provinces, or it could be staff from within our own. But the reason for secondment, what it means is that whoever that is, so the operating dollars that are in the current municipality would continue to fund that position, and they would backfill or hire somebody to fill that. The person would be seconded and paid for by the committee itself.
Okay, I have other questions. I'll have to.
Okay, you'll have to click back in. Councillor Etherington.
Through you, Mr. Chair, a couple of very quick questions. The region, what will we do with? Is the region going to contribute? Regional government.
Through you, Mayor, the region will, and we're scheduled to go in front of the all-council meeting on the 20th of December to make an information presentation, and we'll be doing much as what we're doing here today with you on the 10th of January. So we have been working through some of the staff, some of the functional areas to identify some of the services that we would need to execute the games, and we've been working on a costing exercise, much the same as what we are doing today with you as well.
Thank you. And did I hear correctly, the federal provincial funds, that will be happening in 2018?
Through you, Mayor, the federal and provincial funding, it basically starts as soon as you win the games.
Okay.
So there's no particular year that amount of funding is allocated towards.
Right. Now, in the community, in any community, I'm always aware of competition between arts and culture and sport. You've already mentioned that some of this legacy fund could be used for arts and culture. Do I understand that correctly?
Through you, Mayor, yes, that is correct. Arts and culture plays a tremendous role with the Canada Games. At one point in time, they did have a national artist program where young adults from across the country competed much like the athletes did in varying artistic mediums. That program has since been removed, but that element of a national festival still exists. Part of the work over the next 4.5 years would be identifying opportunities to leverage arts and culture and festivals within the 3 cities. But as well, during the 18 days of the game, there is a festival component that exists that does celebrate not only regional opportunities for culture and music, but also it reflects the national landscape as well, too.
Thank you very much. And I think this is a fabulous idea. Thanks.
Councillor Gazzola.
How long have the Canada Games been in existence?
Yes, through you, Mayor. They're celebrating their 50th anniversary next summer. They came in as a centennial project in '67.
Yeah. Have we ever bid before?
Have we ever hosted before?
Have we ever bid first?
Through you, Mayor, I believe that in 1996, the city did embark on a bid for the 2001 games that were awarded in London, Ontario.
And are there provincial games also?
Through you, Mayor, the provincial games, the Ontario Summer and Winter Games, are a completely different product. We have hosted the Ontario Games here in this market before.
So those are another set. Why is it only every 20 years? How do you come up with that? There are 13 provinces and territories. Is that I hope that's not bad math. The estimates are...
Through you, Mayor, I wish I could answer that fully of what the formula is, but what has to be taken into consideration as well, too, is elements of winter versus summer. So sometimes it would traditionally be an opportunity for a particular province to host, and maybe they can't execute on the winter elements of those things, so it may flip around a little bit to accommodate that. So Ontario has never hosted a winter games, and obviously they're not earmarked to host the winter games.
Another question dealing with the region, why not just go to the region? Why deal with 3 municipalities? Why not just get it all set in one place? The region, they have big pockets up there.
Through you, Mayor, I think the importance, especially with the Regional Sport Tourism Office working at the municipal level, because that is our true partnerships, it was important to recognize the ongoing investment that you continue to make every day in your sport and recreation venues, and to approach it from a collaborative effort as opposed to just going to the region. We know that the region provides particular services to us, but we need to have the viability of those venues.
I think, Councillor Gazzola, just to add to that, I think as you're aware, sports and recreation in our 2-tier system actually falls to the municipality and not the region.
Well, I knew the answer to that, but that doesn't keep the region from jumping in where they want. So you've answered. That's beside the point. You've talked about all the benefits to everyone. What about just a lonely little taxpayer? What are the benefits to them? They don't own a business or what have you, and maybe they don't even have kids that participate. So what are the benefits to them?
Through you, Mayor, I think the benefits are community pride, and there's already pieces that the taxpayer are already invested in terms of maintenance and ongoing costs for different services that we have. And I think whether you've got children or you yourself participate in sport and recreation, it's the other benefits. It's, August 2021, hopefully it'll be beautiful weather. It's an opportunity for you to go and enjoy the city that you live in, to feel civic pride, and to be able to take in some of the opportunities for festivals and events or engaged businesses and whatnot. So it really goes beyond that scope, and that's part of our job, is to make sure that everybody understands that this is a sport property. It's leveraged through a sport lens, but it benefits so many other different facets to a community.
Thank you. I have a couple of little questions of staff.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, in the recommendation, it talks about an advance of $220,000. What is that? To pay the rights fees and transfer of knowledge fee. If I'd have been able to come to your meetings, would I have asked you that then? If that's the case, I don't want to take time here. Okay, let's leave it at that. I should have done. My other question, is in reading the report, it says that if we have to get into this, we're going to need $1 million for capital funds, and it says you're going to find them. Does that mean if we don't get into this, we've got $1 million extra that we can work with other things?
Ms. Kugler?
Through you, Mayor, what it means is that we have an opportunity to leverage capital dollars in this community. So we will be creative in trying to reallocate within our budget to bring in additional dollars to this community that will help with other projects in the future.
Thank you.
Okay, we're now on to second round of questions. Again, if I can just remind folks to keep things as tight as possible. Councillor Fernandez.
Yeah, so the other question I had was regarding the mitigating of the operating. So the money that's coming from both the federal and provincial governments is, what I heard you say was that it would mitigate the operating costs. What happens if there are unforeseen costs? Where does that money come from?
Ms. Kugler?
Through you, Mayor Vanek. So what if for some reason there was something astronomical that happened and we couldn't sell a ticket or we couldn't sell any sponsorship, then the operating deficit then would be split between the 3 municipalities. We would know or have some insight to that before the games actually came into place, and so we would be looking for opportunities to mitigate whatever we could, and we would bring forward reports with recommendations on how we would fund that in advance of the actual end result.
Okay. And so we're also getting capital, and one of the questions I asked you on Friday was what projects or what facilities may have to, because some of the funding is coming from the government, but some of it's going to have to come from us. But what projects are we going to see that maybe in our capital forecast that will now be pushed back because we want to improve a facility for the Canada Games?
Ms. Kugler, if you can just leave your mic on, please.
Okay. So what we would do is prioritize within the sport budgets to look at what sport facilities and dollars that we have and how we could actually leverage those to help reprioritize the capital forecasting in 2018. So 2018 out through to 2021.
Okay. And I guess one question, sorry. Last question regarding the surplus to the legacy funds. If there is that money left over, you said that it could go to a foundation, it could go to who would monitor those funds?
Through you, Mayor, there's agreements that are worked out over the 4 years leading into the games via the board of directors, but also a coordinating committee that's established as well that has representation from the municipalities. And those elements of where the legacy funding should be placed or shared is established there. So by the time you get to the games, that's already been created, because obviously you'd be working through nonprofits. And go from there. I don't know, Councillor Fernandez, if I have a chance to come full circle on one of your questions you had asked about staff time. And I just think it's important to clarify, if the bid is won here for this region, what happens is over the next 4 months, you've got about 4 months to create a nonprofit organization which becomes known as the host society, or in other terms, the organizing committee. That organizing committee then becomes populated, and some of the identification of the staff that would go over to the organizing committee is created through a transition plan, which is one of the elements that we need to submit in the bid submission at the end of January. In some cases, it may be some of us that are already working on the bid via the bid committee, and in other cases, it would be a national and open competition for employment. Where you might start out in the first year employing anywhere between 10 and 15 employees. You eventually expand to the point where at games time you've hired on and employed probably close to 100 full-time employees, populated down with some key venue leads that may be in a volunteer capacity, and then you would have your regular volunteer staff that you would see at the venue. What was being explained is there are opportunities for secondment, for co-op placement, for working through the partnerships that we already have in existence, but certainly all of those costs are budgeted within the operating budget. So it would not be looked at as a responsibility that it be carried through another partner unless that was something that was offered through in-kind service. So I think it's really important to know that once the games are won, the operating and the management of the games moves to an organizational committee. The input from the municipal level is ensured through board of director representation and the coordinating committee.
Okay, thank you. That was great that you could clarify that, and that so the up to 100 employees, that funding, of course, would be part of the funding that has been identified here. Okay, super. Thank you very much.
Councillor Onetsky.
Yes, thank you. One short, sweet question on the last page of your report, Ms. Kugler. The issue of money, and there's a statement here that 2017 Economic Development Reserve or sport budget and a capital commitment of at least $1 million for facility enhancement and upgrades will be addressed during the 2013 budget cycle. So I'm trying to understand that I know there'll be improvements needed to facilities, so whether it's a track or a pool or whatever the venues are, and I know that has to be worked out between Kitchener and Cambridge and Waterloo, who's going to be hosting what, etc. But does that money that's mentioned here, or I guess the statement that's mentioned here, is that going to be like from the Economic Development Reserve, or will the actual more money have to be set aside in your budget, maybe, or how does that work?
Through you, Mayor. So there's two parts there. There's the reference to the Economic Development Reserve in the sport budget was in regards to the loan that's required, the $73,333, which sets up the seed money for the host society once the games are announced. And so that can be determined as part of the decision when we're awarded it, whether it comes from economic development or if it comes from sport. It would come from a reserve, and then it would actually go back once that seed money is replenished.
Okay, I see where you're coming from on that. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Galloway-Seelock.
Yeah, actually mine are questions or comments, and I'd be more than happy to second the recommendation.
Okay, well, there are no other questions at this point, so it sounds like a good time for a seconder and comments.
All right, I will be brief. I think this is a remarkable opportunity for our community. I think it has minimal risks with great rewards with regards to economic impact, upgraded venues, community pride, and so much more. It's a great way for us to showcase our community, and I really do like the fact that we will be partnering with Waterloo and Cambridge as long as your meetings go well in the next 24 hours. But if they're anything like I think we are around here, I don't think you'll have too much of an issue. This opportunity really gets me energized and excited because I think it just really will be fabulous for our community. So I really just want to take an opportunity to wish you all the best in your work ahead, and thank you for your time and dedication. I look forward to hearing the results over the next 2 days, and then I look forward to hearing the results when the bid hopefully is given to this wonderful community that we live in.
Councillor Marsh.
Thank you, Mayor Verbanovic. I just want to echo Councillor Galloway-Seelock's comments that this is really a tremendous opportunity. I'm very excited to support it. I've been very quiet in terms of, I didn't have any questions because all of mine were answered in a pre-meeting with staff, and I just want to commend you all on your tremendous work, very thorough presentation, and I wish you well in the next meetings ahead.
Councillor Etherington.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to say very quickly, you've brought this council a wonderful Christmas present, much better than horrible Christmas sweaters. Thank you.
Councillor Davey.
Thank you. I take it then I guess this is the dry run for the presentation for the other municipalities, and I would like to say you did a very good job and an excellent job in answering the questions as well. I think most of us met with staff beforehand, and as we typically do, we approached this with a bit of a critical eye, and some of us are very risk averse. And I was really quite surprised at the minimal risk that's involved in this process. I was worried about a very difficult decision, and the reality is a very simple one. It hits all the check boxes that we're looking for. The financial aspect for us in terms of the infrastructure investment is largely things that we would want to invest in at some point anyway. We're looking at $100 million as a rough estimate in terms of our economic development stimulus locally. Enhances the quality of life, and this isn't even touching upon any of the great stuff that comes through the nature of sport. So I wanted to echo the comments. Thank you very, very much to the volunteers. I wish you the best of luck speaking to other councils, and I will enthusiastically support this.
Councillor Fernandez.
Thanks for the presentation, and it's interesting to see such an eclectic group of people sitting in the gallery who obviously are very passionate about our region. I'm listening to my colleagues here, and everybody gets really pumped and excited about something like this because they see, some economic development, and they see, I can see the enthusiasm around the games. And remember standing on the corner in the cold winter, waiting for the torch to go by for the Olympics. But I'm also very aware that every dollar that comes, whether it's from the province or the feds or the region, is a tax dollar. And we have to keep that in mind. We got some really not so good news this year about our WSIB. We got some really not good news 2 years ago about our infrastructure. And we have to keep in mind that that's part of our legislative responsibility as a city, is our pavement and our pipes, but also our parks. So parks plays into this. Parks plays into the amenities and our community services for our citizens. So, I'm going to be supportive of this, with the caveat that I will be watchful about how we proceed. The $73,000 is gone one way or another through our Economic Development Reserve and their initiatives, Make It Kitchener, or through this initiative. And my understanding is it doesn't come back if we lose the bid, but if we do get the bid, it does come back to us. And I stand corrected if I'm wrong. There are hydro costs that are escalating. Our average citizen is dealing with that. I don't want to see this tax our citizens any further. If it comes back in spades with economic development for our community, and that's Kitchener, Waterloo, and Cambridge, we also have, I'll be thrilled, and I know our citizens will be thrilled. But I think we have to be cautiously optimistic. Thanks.
Councillor Yanetsky.
Well, I think the first thing we'll probably do after we make a decision here, we'll be hearing from our taxpayers this week in terms of, well, what are you spending our money on again? This is nice to have, and it really is nice to have. It's an opportunity that comes once in a generation, basically, as it's been explained. But the nice to have is also competing with need to have, which is our infrastructure issues of services and water, mains breaking down, and that's been hammered into us for the last handful of years by our engineers, that we are way behind in making infrastructure updated, and it is a problem. I struggle with this in terms of, yeah, I'd like to have it, but also we need to have water and services as well. But I see the benefit of the services of these games. The potential of surplus is good. The money of working together and the impact on our community in terms of the economic benefit is good. And it's going to take place over the next 4 to 5 years as opposed to next year where we have to put all the money in the bag and pay for it. So we can spread the money over for the next 4 or 5 years. We may not, some of us may not be back in the next term of council when this all games do take place, and some of us may be here as well. So I toil with this. I will reluctantly support the games because I think it's a benefit. I'll prepare to get an earful from my taxpayers as well. But I think in the long run, it'll be a benefit, and I think we can spread the games out and we can still pay for the infrastructure issues that we have to go with over the next many years, although the games wouldn't be as impactful in terms of the dollars and cents as the infrastructure dollars will contend with. So I will be supporting it.
Councillor Gazzola.
I too have struggled with this issue, as I read and reread this over the weekend, I was not in support of this. Not that it's not a good thing, not that it's not a great thing, but we have so many issues that we're facing, it seems all of a sudden. Our infrastructure problems, our utility rates going over the ceiling, and later today we're going to deal with creating starting a new creative hub. Our capital forecast a couple of weeks ago, we added $14 million of new things. We have so many things on the horizon, and I just felt that, this isn't the time for it. Having said that, I'm going to be maybe what they call a hostile witness, a hostile supporter. And which means I will support it, but I will have a close eye, Lord willing, as long as I'm around this horseshoe, I do want to say the thing that has changed my mind today, and it's something that I've seen here in this community for the last 60 years, is that we have a tremendous volunteer support group, and I'm confident because of that tremendous support group that we can get through this and put our communities, our 3 communities, our region out there, and hopefully without any additional costs to our little taxpayers who don't have an opportunity to possibly get involved in all these things, but who at the end of the day have to go to the grocery store and pay the bills. So I will support it, but as a couple of colleagues on council have said, we'll be watching closely, and I think it takes both sides to work on something. We need to have people as the volunteers in the group that are involved to be energetic and great salesmen, and unfortunately in society we need some bean counters back in the office to keep an eye on things. So I'm sure in the fullness of time that this will be very successful. It'll do a lot of things. I keep hearing putting us on the map. I think we've been on the map for many years, so it'll maybe just raise us a little higher on the map. So I have my eyes on things, but in the interim, I do wish everyone good luck and success in this.
Okay, point of clarification has been called. Councillor Galloway-Seelock.
Yeah, my clarification would be a question to staff. I'm hearing that stuff around infrastructure and dollars and tax dollars. I just want to make sure I understand clearly that there's no new additional dollars that are being asked for from the city with this regards. We're just reallocating existing dollars, and we're not taking away any money from our accelerated infrastructure, our water, or anything in order to make this happen.
Ms. Kugler.
Through you, Mayor Zaire, we are going to work with,
That's okay, I didn't even flinch.
Sorry about that, Mayor Vanek. Okay, sorry. So I'm into the dollars. So as far as the capital goes, we are going to find it within our existing budgets and try to shift around the priorities of our own projects to advance these.
But it's work that you would likely already be doing at some point in time, but there may just be shifting of years.
Correct.
Thank you.
Councillor Fernandez.
I'm calling this only because I want to make it perfectly clear that those of us who have had questions about the cost of the infrastructure recognize that it is not new money, it is existing money. We've already said that. But we want to make sure that our taxpayers and the people who are watching and listening today recognize that we know that this money could be going to something. Now some of it may be directed to something else. Just want to make that perfectly clear.
No, that's fine. Let's move on, please. Councillor Singh. Councillor Gazzola, you're down the queue. You weren't done yet. Okay, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I thought it was my turn.
Well, Councillor Gazzola wasn't done yet, apparently, so
Well,
go
I
ahead.
had a minute 18.
Okay, that's fine. Go ahead.
No, I'm really just, I shouldn't say this, but I'm disappointed on some of our councillors. I mean, I think it's taken a great deal. It looks like it's going to be a unanimous decision, and for I'm going to leave it at that.
Okay, thank you for that comment. Councillor Singh.
Yeah, I'll try to be quick as possible, Mr. Mayor. I'm glad everyone that's spoken that has come forward with their support, even if some through reluctance. And of course, I am supportive of this too. I think the numbers make sense, the business case makes sense, the benefit to our community is quite apparent through past games. But what I do want to quickly take a moment to speak on, and this is not a condemnation on anything that's said from my colleagues that have raised some caution or concern. I think always you have to approach things with aspect of caution. That's what we're elected here to do, to be mindful of how monies are spent and how we operate. But with this, I think it's important that the perception that we present to the community, those that are watching and hearing, because some of the comments that have been said sends a impression that this is something that's going to take in place of something else. That's not the case. The dollars that would be found to do this would have come from through the capital program that would have been necessary or for improvements to our recreational facilities. So it may be re-advancement or juggling around of those projects, but it's dollars that would have been spent irrespective if we had gone through this or not. But through this opportunity, it gives us an advantage that we get extra monies from the province and the feds. Yes, it's the same taxpayer, but guess what? As a taxpayer, I want all that money here. I don't want it anywhere else. It's advantage to us, the little guy here. When we get extra facilities, we get improvements to our community, when we get economic development, it's important happening here. And the beauty of this all is, we're doing it hardly with the most minimal cost. And that's what's important to the little guy.
Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Mayor Brvanovic. Without repeating all the positive comments of my fellow councillors, I just want to say I enthusiastically support this and I'm proud to do so.
Councillor Ioannidis.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Brvanovic. I didn't even notice that you said Mayor Zaire, but we're so used to hearing around this.
I understand we're looking for a new director of... no. Just kidding.
I just wanted to... I wholeheartedly support this initiative, and it's just amazing the amount of volunteers, the people here, the way the community, the way our region collaborates and works together to bring something that's going to be outstanding for our community. It's just kudos to all the individuals that are working here. Proud to have you guys in our community, and thank you for that. And I don't want to repeat some of the comments made from some of my colleagues, but I think I would hear more of an earful. Why didn't we go for it? Than why didn't we go for it? I mean, not go for it. So that's not what I'm here to hear. I don't want to hear that earful myself. But it goes on to the legacy fund and everything else. Like, these are just so much advantage to our community that it's hard to ignore this and not want to have us participate. And again, I wholeheartedly support this. Thank you.
And I'll just, now that everyone's made their comments, I'll just make mine. I want to begin by thanking everyone again for the work that's been done to get us to this point. I think the proposal that's before us allows us to really take the opportunity to highlight what Waterloo Region is, and that's that we're a dynamic urban center. In fact, we're 3 dynamic urban centers surrounded by 4 dynamic rural centers. And collectively, we've been able to create this unique environment in this part of Ontario that's an outstanding place to live, work, and play, where we maintain that small town feel but have many of the amenities of large urban centers across the country. I think the opportunity that's been presented before us allows us to do what we do best. And that's been a proposal that's built on partnership and collaboration. Partnership and collaboration between the municipalities, between the public and the private sector, between various community groups and not-for-profits and those public and private sector partners, and put this proposal before the bid committee, or between the committee that's ultimately going to be making the decision. There's no question in my mind that this region has a very diverse economy, and this proposal is going to give us the opportunity to celebrate our diversity, the inclusivity that happens in our region, and also the fact that we right now are at the forefront of a very innovative local tech and innovation scene that's not only playing out nationally, but is also putting the Toronto-Waterloo Region corridor on a global map. It's going to demonstrate that not only is this a great place to live, work, and play, but it's also a vibrant place to invest. And it'll give us an opportunity, as has been pointed out, to showcase this area both nationally and internationally with earned media that we could otherwise never afford on our own without putting a significant burden on taxpayers. As I said, it is a unique opportunity to build on the partnerships and collaborations that this region is known for, that we're trying to do more and more of in terms of our things like our economic development strategy, and to see how we can leverage this opportunity with other opportunities that are going to present themselves. Last, but certainly not least, in fact, in my mind, it's also, and most importantly, it's going to allow us to support our young athletes from this area and allow them to, when our community is selected, allow them to stand behind the Canadian flag, knowing that this community is behind them as they pursue their hopes, dreams, and aspirations going forward. I am pleased that it seems like this is heading down the road to a unanimous vote, and I think it would be appropriate that somebody requests a recorded vote, which has been requested now. And so with that, we will move to the vote. And that is carried unanimously. Thank you again, everyone, for all of your hard work. Keep us in the loop as the bid selection committee makes their way to Waterloo Region. Let us know how we can help going forward. Thank you very much. Have a great evening. Councillor Gazzola.
I'm on to the next topic.
Sorry?
I'm on to the next topic. I'd like to move a recommendation.
On Planning and Development Advisory Committee?
Yes.
Okay. I'm trying to. Is there a presentation from staff? No. Okay. So then, go ahead, Councillor Gazzola.
I would move the recommendation that Council select option 1 as outlined in Report CSD 16077 in response to a motion to explore Planning and Development Advisory Committee options.
Okay. Is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Yanetsky. Okay. Councillor Singh.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm glad Alan is here because I may not be supportive of the recommendation in this report, but clearly it seems that staff did give itself full consideration as to the intent of what the motion was. Somewhere in the nuances of the report, I think it may have lost, and I just want to bring it back to that. I even myself, on the onset, was a little bit cautious to give too much as to the direction of if successful, what that committee would be, as to the meeting formats and all that. I wanted staff to have that opportunity to explore that fully. But I personally thought that regular meetings, like the monthly meetings, similar to our other advisory committees, probably wasn't necessary because the scope was on the planning matters, and which are far and few in between, and you don't need to be meeting regularly just to see how everyone is doing. So based on option number 3, now staff, can you just clarify as a resource on that? Is it possible to find resources within existing complement to support 2 to 3 meetings a year? 3 to 4 meetings a year, as outlined in that option?
Mr. Pinard.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, option 3 would involve reallocating existing resources to carry out those meetings. It is also mentioned in the description of option 3 that in order to not impact project timelines, that would also mean cutting back on some of the other engagement that currently takes place. But the actual administering of the committee would be done with a reallocation of existing resources.
So, and that's where my confusion was a little bit. Why would there be scaling back? We're talking about 2 to 3 meetings a year. We're not talking about, a full afternoon, a full day. Typically, it's an hour, 2-hour meetings in most advisory committee meetings. How could those just limited meetings take away our opportunity to do what we already do through various engagement, which is very extensive and rightly so? I don't think you can ever have enough engagement with our constituency and just stakeholders as a whole.
Okay, so through you, Mr. Mayor, there are really two parts to the response. The first is that our planning projects are very tightly programmed, and we have very little margins in terms of staying in order to stay on track and to meet all of the milestones and the expected completion dates. So we actually did program our projects into our project management software to see what it would do, and just to fit things in, because we have competing time slots for meeting rooms, staffing, to be able to attend. It would actually add the amount of time that is shown and indicated in the report to the project timelines. But also, even if it's 3 or 4 meetings, it's not only the time that it's in these meetings, but the actual preparation of the agenda materials, the making sure that staff is available to present the reports.
My apologies. No, finish.
So essentially, it is more. If it's just added over and above and on top, is actually just more effort to actually do that.
Sure, and any time that's taken is an extra effort. But when you outline reports, when we're doing engagement, again, we do engagement at other various capacities too. Wouldn't it be circulation of the same report? Why would it be a very defined, specific report for this committee as opposed to the ongoing engagement that we would do in various other forums?
Okay, through you, Mr. Mayor. And I think there's some indication of this in the report where we outline all the different forms of engagement that we do. So almost each and every point of contact with a community group or a committee is actually a customized level of materials, but also the format. So we actually don't have an advisory committee format that's a special purpose advisory committee format, other than perhaps the materials that we're now take around to other advisory committees, but they would not be the ultimate deciding advisory committee. They actually feed into the process earlier for an end product. But if we're scaling back on that, and it would be those meetings, then there's more neutrality in terms of the impacts, but it still means scaling back on the meetings and the items that we're presenting to the other advisory committees.
Okay. I know, Mr. Mayor, you didn't start the clock, so I'll just come out of this, but I have more questions.
Okay. Councillor Netsky.
Yes, thank you very much. I totally agree with option 1. This is the way to go. I think by having this new review committee is a step backwards, maybe several steps backwards. I remember back 40 years ago when the planning staff had discussions with the building industry and trying to come to grips, and the formation of the Waterloo Regional Home Builders Association. And we created meetings with staff to have dialogue and to discuss issues. One of the first issues that did come forward was the special development zoning under bylaw 4830 for R2C zonings. Reduce smaller lot housing with the industry, and we were communicating with them and with the zoning, with our staff to create appropriate zoning. So that committee that was created 40 years ago was probably one of the best things that happened to the community between the building industry and planning staff, and has been functioning for 40 years with no problems. and even in covering the attached letter from the Builders Association acknowledges all that. And over the years, it's worked fine, but there has been issues with planning and development, and those matters have been more on an individual basis that the property owners or the building industry that have been unable to resolve matters between the two parties were able to come before council. Council made a decision, and if those decisions weren't fine, he went to the Ontario Municipal Board. So the process was in place, and everything worked fine. To create this new committee, to me, it's prolonging it, having more extra staff. I mean, Mr. Bernard did an excellent report here outlining all the rationale and issues that we would have to address and try to deal with. And we aren't moving forward by going this. Best way, leave it as is, the status quo, option one, that's the only way to go.
Okay. Councillor Fernandez.
Yeah, Mr. Bernard, I have a question regarding the letter that was sent to you by the Home Builders Association. In reviewing this, I see that they have a liaison committee, that staff sits on that committee as well, or they just come when there's a particular issue or policy matter?
Okay, through you, Mr. Mayor, just a clarification. Are you asking about the comment in the letter about council's involvement, or is that about the current staff involvement with the liaison committee?
No, the current staff liaison to the Waterloo Regional Home Builders Association.
Yes, so through you, Mr. Mayor, so this is a committee that meets monthly on a Friday. And it includes staff representatives from the building division, planning, and engineering. And on an as-needed basis, we bring in staff from other divisions. For example, there's an annual report on the development charges reserve account. So someone from financial planning comes in to present that.
Okay, so I was writing that down. So you said building, planning, and engineering meet monthly with the Home Builders Association.
That is correct.
Okay, and if there was a particular issue that they would be concerned about, the Home Builders Association would they then be able to discuss that with staff at this meeting, and would staff also be bringing new information to them, like you said, about development charges and things, to this liaison group?
Yes, so through you, Mr. Mayor, there's a call out for agenda items about 2 weeks before each meeting. Items are brought onto the agenda about equally from both either staff members or from members of the industry. This particular item, in fact, was something that an industry member wanted to raise and discuss and create a forum for some input to council. However, it is a forum where our major planning projects are items that we do put on the agenda in order to firstly make members of the industry aware of the initiative and let them know how they can participate into the larger processes. And in some cases, we actually do solicit specific input at those meetings.
Okay, thank you. Then, so this is a sort of an ad hoc committee, but we also go through our site plan review committee, which offers the development industry opportunity to sit down and with staff in a very intensive time frame, sometimes an entire morning, to go through site plan review as well. And we have public meetings at which time the development industry can also attend those public meetings and listen to the input from the residents and from staff as well, right?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Just one. The answer is yes, but I'm going to qualify it in that site plan review committee deals with development applications, and the content of the report and what has been discussed is on the project-based work. So new guiding documents, new regulations and policies, and not specific applications. But all of those things that I just mentioned are matters that usually come before committee and council in public forums. And we also do have stakeholder sessions built in, and examples are provided in the report.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. I really appreciate your input on this particular issue.
Councillor Etherington.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just, I guess, 3 questions. Would this particular committee, in your opinion, Elaine, would it add anything positive to the existing procedures that appear to be working well? Now, I recognize that's a huge question, but just off the top of your head, would it add anything positive?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, any additional conversation cannot hurt, has the potential to add. However, as explained in the report, there are trade-offs with doing more or doing additional things, and those are presented in the report.
And in your opinion, would it benefit citizens or, the average Joe in neighborhoods dealing with community issues? Would it give that kind of person additional outlets?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I don't know if individual members would get any more benefit of having someone else speak for them, but there would be members from the general community that who would take the time to read the materials that could perhaps cover off some of those interests. But there's really no one-size-fits-all answer for that situation.
Okay, and if you had such a committee, my understanding is you'd have, or your recommendation would be that it would be 6 citizen members and 6 development members?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is just something that I presented in as a way that could address the competing streams of information that we tend to get on most planning initiatives, especially major planning projects where we are more likely than not to receive responses from constituencies that have very competing objectives.
Okay. And my final question, for many, many years, I've heard on council and outside of council complaints in the development industry about the time it takes for us to handle applications. On page 3-5, I believe it says that instead of streamlining the process, it would lengthen the process. Am I reading that correctly?
Okay, hold on. There's been a point of clarification. Councillor Singh.
Yeah, I apologize for interrupting you in mid-sentence. It's just that I was hoping to wait to my turn to clarify that through staff, this question. But you're the third person asking the same thing, and I think there's a thought process that's carrying through, which I think the report, the essence of this recommendation was never the case, is it's not to deal with individual applications, but the larger body of work, the planning work that we undertake, but not to do with individual applications that are put forward by developers. So that's important for us to keep that in mind. It's a third person asking a similar thing. I wanted to make sure that that's understood by the committee.
Elaine, could you give me an answer on that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I was actually going to answer the same thing that that Councillor Singh just stated, that the focus on the report and on my review has been on the project-based work, not individual applications.
Well, then what do you mean when you say it would add time to any development request? I believe that's what it says.
Sorry, can you repeat that, Councillor Etherington? Can you repeat that last comment?
I asked, in that case, what is meant by the comment on page 3.5, which seems to read that such a committee would extend instead of shorten the time involved in any development.
So Through you, Mayor Verbanovich, if I'm looking at the portion of the report that you're referring to, Councillor Etherington, it's referring to the project work. So all projects are actually programmed and actually have a forecasted completion date. And that completion date would be in jeopardy, is what this is saying. It's not development applications.
Both of you have, Councillor Fernandez, you've already spoken on this issue as well?
I have a question for Ms. Todd.
Okay, I'll come back to you. Councillor Singh.
Yes, thank you. And I appreciate the questions that have been being asked, and I think it's important because this is a kind of off-base suggestion to begin with, and something that staff had not considered before, and I can appreciate that we all have a lot of questions as to if there was agreement, what this type of committee would do. But it's important for us to know what we're really supporting or not supporting. Now, a couple of questions that was asked was based on the liaison, the Home Builders Association. Now, that association, what's a composition of, outside of engineers or technical persons, of developers? What's the composition of that committee?
So, through you, Mr. Mayor, the committee has representatives who are home builders, some who are developers, and then there is one lawyer, and then there are consultants, and there are consultants from the engineering and the planning consulting.
So primarily, it's more greenfield development then.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there's nothing that actually stipulates that should be the composition. But just doing like sort of a 360 of the people that I see around the table on a monthly basis, I would say that there are more members in attendance who do more greenfield work than infield work. Yes.
Are members of the general public on that committee?
There are no members of the public on that committee.
Okay, and when you talk about the timing of a report being completed may be extended. Now, you did a really good thing. If anything out of this report, even if it doesn't go anywhere, the Appendix A 3-10 was a helpful paper for us to remind us of all the works that we're doing and when this is coming for completion. So I found that chart helpful. But everything I'm looking at, we're looking at anywhere between 2 to 3 or 4 year span of time. Like five actually, one of them. So when you say that it may extend that timing, are we talking about it may extend it when it's allocated for a 5-year review of a study? It might add an extra year to it.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, so we're saying 6 to 8 weeks for each 12 months of project work. So on a 4-year project, conceivably, it could add not a full year, but more than half a year.
More than half a year, so that means you would require. Okay, and I don't want to get.
And it's not the actual meeting time, but it's also the complication of scheduling within a very tightly time framed and scheduled and programmed project.
Okay, well, I'll leave that to the committee's determination as for the delay in the timing. And when we look at, and I'm glad that you clarified through Councillor Etherington's question that, again, the framework of this committee is in review and discussion and dialogue related to larger body of works when it relates to the planning development, not to deal with individual applications. Now, when we have public engagement meetings to deal with this stuff, and we have it open to the general public, is there a roundtable discussion where this general public, like a kind of a balance of the general public and a developer being able to present ideas and ask questions back and forth across the table? Do we have that type of engagement currently taking place?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, we have different formats that do take place, and a lot of our projects, when we have our sort of either town hall or workshop format meetings, we will have some that are open to everyone. So we will then have, input that will include a mix of members of the community at large and members of the development industry. So if it's a breakout table type format, there may be some members from the development industry mixed in with members of the general public at all of those breakout tables. If it's a wide open, big room format, members of the community and members of the industry can ask questions and provide comments in a very intermixed way. But more importantly than that, we actually will have some sessions that are dedicated to the industry alone. Right. And in those sessions, we will actually receive direct feedback from industry members only.
So quickly, so there's not a consistency of what I'm saying, the aspect of kind of, the cumulative process of, the members of the general public and the development community having that dialogue. That's not, it may happen on some projects, but it's not consistency throughout all engagements, though.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is fair to say, yes, you're correct.
Okay, all right. I had one other question, but I'll...
Councillor Fernandez.
Yeah, I just have a quick question of Christine. So this would be another committee that would be underneath your jurisdiction. Is that correct? You'd have to have a committee support and help with, but sorry, the word just escaped me. You would have to be helping with setting agendas and monitoring the committee and such forth, and minutes and things like that, right?
Ms. Turner?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, in consultation with Mr. Pinard, no, it would only be for option number 2, but yes, you're correct that legislative service staff in that option would be required to be participative in doing all of the agendas and the minutes and participating in the meetings as committee administrator.
Okay, and I didn't see how much time we spend now sort of supporting any of our advisory committees. Did I miss that?
Yes, I believe that if you look on page 3-4, Mr. Pinard has outlined the legislative services support staff for the committees that we're involved in.
Oh, sorry, I don't want to make you repeat yourself, but thank you. Okay. I did see that. I just the time didn't stay with me, and that we're talking about 23 to 28 hours per meeting for all of the legislative service responsibilities.
Approximately, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I have one question, and I just want to be clear on this. So on recommendation number 3, which is the alternative that's being suggested if the current motion doesn't carry, if I understand it clearly, what it's saying is that this new committee would in effect take away the input of the other advisory committees to a certain extent, correct?
Yes, to you, Mr. Mayor, it would.
Okay, and so these other advisory committees that help us have this holistic look at any of these planning applications, we would lose that benefit potentially?
Yes, in the model that's presented that does not add to the project timelines, if it was added over and above, then it's not something that staff would support.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so there is a motion that's been moved and seconded by Councillors Gazzola and Yanetsky on the floor. We have comments now. Councillor Singh?
Yeah, quickly. So I've already suggested that I would be encouraging for option 3 if the motion for do nothing fails. And I would encourage members of the committee that to give this consideration. Although the staff report seems to be a bit cited in aspect of no or not a significant benefit, I still want to personally retain that opinion that I think any extra engagement is good engagement. What's being suggested is a kind of a collaborative forum of ideas exchange that doesn't necessarily take place on all our engagement when it's related to larger body of work for planning matters. This would create that atmosphere of dialogue and conversation between two different sets of interest groups: the general public who sees their community changing, their neighborhoods changing, and the development community that's seeing any potential as a business case, as a way to make money. And there's a middle ground in this. To develop a community the right way, we want to make sure that we follow that middle ground. And I think we do good work through the engagement already, but I think there is sometimes missing of that key aspect of a kind of an open approach of dialogue. And I think this committee would allow that. And again, 3 to 4 meetings, I think, is not too onerous. Staff has said they could find within existing resources, so it's not resource on top. I think if you encourage staff, I'm sure they are capable, as well as I have tremendous faith in their ability that they could manage to do this extra work within the time and coming close to the outline of the completion of the reports within the mandate time. But that's wishful thinking. But again, it's wishful thinking based on a lot of confidence in what our staff are capable of doing with limited resources. But anyways, based on that, I would be encouraging to not support option 1, but in fact, if there gets an opportunity, to support option 3, to allow this to go forward, and let's see what happens.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Etherington.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I will support the staff suggestion and the motion that we do nothing on this. In my opinion, we can play with words all night long, but to me, this committee would, in a large way, serve to advance the wishes of the development industry. And I think that industry already has lots of room within our existing committees to get their points across.
Councillor Marsh.
Thank you, Mayor Verbanovic. I just want to commend Councillor Singh on bringing forward a new idea. I don't know that I can support it today because I'm hearing loud and clear from staff that time is not going to be on our side. But, just because something has been in place for as long as I've been alive doesn't mean that we shouldn't try something new. And so perhaps in a few years, if we see the need, if Councillor Singh sees the need as well, he could articulate it in a different way and perhaps give us more reason to really make this happen. But for today, I can't support that, and that is why I will support the motion that's on the table.
And there don't appear to be any other comments. I'll just make mine. I too am pleased that we've had this discussion on this issue and want to thank Councillor Singh for raising it, because I think it is important that from time to time we have a dialogue around our processes, take a look at what's working well, what's not working well. Are there some tweaks and suggestions that we should make in terms of moving things forward? I think in this particular instance, though, when I look at all of the pros and cons that have been articulated in the report, and consider the fact that I know we have a very good working relationship with our existing liaison committee, coupled with all of the work that we've done around improving citizen engagement and so on, I believe that the recommendation that's on the floor that's been moved by Councillor Gazzola at this point in time is the one that makes the most sense for this issue. Doesn't mean that, in future years, depending on what happens with development and other things, it's something that we might want to revisit, possibly. But I think at this point, with all the work that has been done and the relationships that already exist in the context of having good and effective dialogue, I think we're in a good position to be addressing the issues that come before us. So with that, a recorded vote has been called. All those in favor? All those opposed? The motion carries. Okay, that takes us through the agenda. Mr. Clerk, do we need 3 readings of the stuff that's on this agenda, or will it be covered off under the regular council tonight? Regular council tonight? Okay, great. So motion to adjourn then. Moved by Councillor Davies, seconded by Councillor Schneider. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And we'll start in 5 minutes in the caucus room.